Tonight we talk about unraveling Mayan astronomical calendar predictions. You begin beneath a heavy velvet sky deep in the Yucatan jungle, where the air tastes faintly of limestone and sap. The hum of cicadas weaves around you, almost like static from an old radio tuned to the cosmos. Overhead, the stars scatter so thickly they seem painted onto the heavens with crushed quartz. You blink and realize the Maya once did more than look at these same stars. They mapped them, measured them, and tried to predict the heartbeat of creation itself. And if you're thinking that sounds easy, you probably won't survive the math. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I like imagining who else is awake under other skies. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You tread through a world lit only by starlight and torch glow. The air hums with mosquitoes and distant howler monkeys. Around you, the silhouettes of ancient temples pierce the canopy. Their edges crumbling, but their alignment perfect. They aren't random piles of stone. Every angle, every stair, every carving had a celestial purpose. The Maya believed the gods had woven the stars into a script, and reading it correctly could mean the difference between abundance and ruin. You pause at a clearing. There, a circular plaza opens like an eye staring skyward. Once, this would have been packed with astronomer priests, heads tilted back, marking the movement of Venus, Jupiter, and even the faint shadows cast by the moon's edge. No telescopes, no computers, just sharp eyes, polished obsidian mirrors, and patience measured in generations. Historians still argue whether these priests were true scientists or theatrical magicians, who happened to get lucky with a few correct predictions. Maybe it was both. A breeze brushes past, carrying the faint scent of copal incense. You imagine the rituals, eardrums, chants, and the low hum of conch shells echoing into the night. You almost see a figure raise a hand toward the horizon where Venus, the evening star, flares to life. To the Maya, that light wasn't just a dot of gas millions of kilometers away, it was a divine signal. If Venus rose at a certain angle, it might herald a time of war. If it lingered too long, perhaps the maize crop would fail. Some say the priests even predicted solar eclipses centuries in advance, their calculations etched into stone tablets that still survive. One mainstream fact remains clear. Mayan astronomers used at least 3 interlocking calendars: the Hab for the solar year, the Tzolk'in for ritual cycles, and the long count for the grand cosmic timeline. Together, they functioned like gears in a vast celestial clock. And unlike most civilizations of their era, the Maya didn't see time as a straight line. It was a wheel, always spinning, always returning. A quirky tidbit: some stargazers today still swear the Maya encoded the precession of Earth's axis, long before the Greeks did. That's like figuring out leap years without ever seeing a globe. Imagine that level of dedication, watching sunrise after sunrise for decades, just to notice the tiniest drift along the horizon. It's the kind of thing that makes you feel both amazed and mildly lazy. As the night deepens, you sit on a fallen stone, tracing your fingers over a weathered glyph. It's not just decoration, it's data. Someone, 1,000 years ago, chiseled astronomical equations into this rock with a stone hammer, believing the future depended on it. The stars above shimmer faintly, almost as if nodding in approval. You can almost hear them whisper through the leaves, "Keep watching. Time is never still." And with that quiet murmur echoing through your mind, you rise and begin walking toward the next temple, where stone itself begins to measure the days. You walk toward the looming silhouette of El Castillo, the Great Pyramid at Chichen Itza, its steps rising sharply against the early light. As dawn spills over the jungle, the temple's geometry reveals its secret. It isn't just a monument, it's a machine. The Maya built stone as a clock. You stand at the base, craning your neck upward, counting the tiers, 91 steps on each of her sides, plus the top platform, 365, the number of days in a solar year. Coincidence? Not a chance. When sunlight strikes the pyramid during the spring and autumn equinoxes, a serpent-shaped shadow slides down the staircase, linking heaven to earth in a shimmering illusion. You stare at the pattern, half expecting the feathered serpent god, Kukulkan, to slither out and demand a schedule update. The precision is so immaculate that modern engineers still use lasers to verify how perfectly it aligns with the sun's position. Historians still argue whether this was intentional cosmic symbolism or just astonishing architectural luck, but deep down, you sense the Maya didn't rely on luck for anything. You wander along the plaza where stonemasons once worked, chiseling limestone so smooth it almost hums under your fingers. The heat rises, but in your imagination, you can hear the clack of obsidian tools, the rhythm of hands sculpting calendars into permanence. Every block you pass bears the ghost of purpose, a compass, a sundial, a calendar. To the Maya, time wasn't abstract, it had a heartbeat, and their temples were built to pulse with it. The main structure stands like a frozen equation. The corners point precisely to the cardinal directions. Its shadow lengths change daily, marking both equinoxes and solstices. You realize the pyramid was a living observatory, the entire complex calibrated to record the dance of the sun. It's as if the universe handed them the blueprint, and they just followed instructions. A mainstream fact the archaeologists agree on: the Maya achieved this astronomical mastery without metal tools or the wheel. They measured time through celestial observation alone, charting solstices, lunar phases, and planetary motion using sightlines built into their architecture. To them, every rising sun was a data point, every shadow a clue. You can almost hear an ancient astronomer mumbling, "Cloudy again, great. There goes my whole month's observation." But here's a quirky tidbit. Some temples were acoustically engineered too. If you clap your hands at the base of El Castillo, the echo sounds like the chirp of a quetzal bird, the sacred messenger of the gods. Imagine priests performing rituals here, their chants bouncing back as divine replies. Sound, light, and stone combined into a cosmic feedback loop. It's one of those design features that makes you wonder if ancient engineers also had a sense of humor. You walk the length of the causeway, your footsteps echoing faintly. Nearby, a round building rises, a rare shape among Mayan structures. Locals call it El Caracal, the snail, for its spiral staircase. Inside, narrow windows pierce the walls at deliberate angles, aligning with the positions of Venus and certain constellations. This wasn't a temple, it was an observatory. Astronomer priests once climbed its winding corridors, noting planetary movements on bark paper codices. They believed that understanding the heavens meant controlling destiny itself, or still. Historians debate whether these structures were used primarily for ritual, agricultural scheduling, or sheer astronomical obsession. Some say the Maya needed to predict seasons for farming. Others think it was about aligning human life with divine cycles. And maybe, just maybe, the architects liked showing off their cosmic precision to neighboring kingdoms because nothing says, "Don't mess with us," like a temple that predicts eclipses. The air thickens as noon approaches, cicadas screaming overhead. You pause at the pyramid's shadow, again perfectly straight, crisp, and deliberate. For a brief second, you swear you see time itself moving across the stones, a slow pulse echoing between centuries. You wonder how many sunrises this place has witnessed, how many shadows have crept down those stairs. Somewhere between the hum of the jungle and the rhythm of your own heartbeat, you feel the truth settle in. These people didn't just build to last, they built to measure forever. You leave the pyramid behind, following a stone path that winds through the jungle like a half-forgotten equation. The air grows cooler as clouds drift across the sun, and you find yourself standing before another temple complex, smaller, but etched with even stranger patterns. Here, the Maya turned their gaze to the skies, not just to track the sun, but to follow the delicate dance between the sun and the moon. You tilt your head back and imagine what they saw. The lunar disk sliding in front of the solar blaze, plunging the world into an eerie twilight. To the Maya, these eclipses were never random, they were rehearsed cosmic dramas. They believed that the heavens mirrored earthly life, and when the sky gods quarreled, people below had to restore balance. That's why priests watched the heavens with a kind of sacred anxiety, trying to anticipate when those celestial arguments might break out. As you step closer, you spot a row of glyph spirals, dots, crescents. One depicts a snake swallowing the sun. You smile softly, recognizing the poetic way the Maya recorded astronomy. No algebra, no charts, just symbols alive with myth. Historians still argue whether such images were literal eclipse records, or moral warnings wrapped in celestial metaphor. Either way, these carvings prove the Maya could predict both solar and lunar eclipses within days of accuracy. Centuries in advance, you climb a low stairway, and the horizon opens before you. The temples line up neatly, almost suspiciously so, like dancers holding perfect formation. When the sun rises, it slides between the towers. When the moon sets, its light grazes a specific carving on the courtyard's edge. You realize that architecture and astronomy weren't separate disciplines, they were one. Continuous prayer written in stone. The mainstream fact is that Mayan astronomers relied on interlocking calendar systems to coordinate solar and lunar cycles. The Tzolk'in, a sacred 260-day calendar, intertwined with the 365-day Hab calendar, creating a repeating calendar round of 52 solar years. Every completion of that cycle was celebrated with massive fire ceremonies to restart the universe, like hitting refresh on cosmic software. A small mistake meant inviting chaos, which if you've ever messed up a time zone setting feels weirdly relatable. But there's a quirky tidbit buried in their lunar math. The Maya tracked the moon's nodes, the invisible points, where its orbit intersects the ecliptic something even some early Renaissance astronomers overlooked. From those intersections came the timing of eclipses, the synchronization of tides, and even predictions for ideal harvest dates. You can almost picture a priest muttering, "See, told you the gods prefer waxing crescents for planting." You imagine one of those nights when the entire city gathered in silence, as the full moon swelled fat and golden above the trees, the air thick with torch smoke and anticipation. Then, a sliver of shadow bites into the lunar disk. Gasps ripple through the crowd. A conch shell sounds. Somewhere on a high terrace, a priest records the moment in a bark paper book, carefully marking the cycle. To the people below, it is terror and awe. To him, it's just data. The overlap between faith and observation blurs so neatly that you wonder if we've ever really separated the two. Historians debate whether the Maya's obsession with celestial cycles stemmed from pure reverence, or a fear of divine punishment if they lost track. Maybe both. After all, if you believed your city's survival hinged on pleasing the gods of the sky, you'd probably double-check your eclipse charts too. You take a breath, feeling the last echoes of ceremony in the air. The jungle around you hums with invisible electricity, the same pulse that must have guided those ancient astronomers. Overhead, clouds part, and the sun breaks free once more. For a fleeting instant, its light aligns perfectly between the temple columns, scattering warmth across your face. You can almost feel the system click into place again, like a clock striking the hour. Somewhere in that alignment, you sense the truth that drove them. To understand the heavens wasn't about controlling them. It was about belonging to their rhythm. You follow the flicker of torchlight down a limestone stairway, deeper into the shadowed corridors of another ancient observatory. The air turns damp and still. Somewhere above, the night opens into an obsidian bowl spattered with stars, and one in particular gleams with unsettling brightness. Venus. To the Maya, that light wasn't gentle or romantic. It was a blade in the sky, the warrior star. You step into an open courtyard, its floor cracked but perfectly centered on the horizon where Venus rises before dawn. Ancient astronomer priests once stood exactly where you are, clutching carved staffs and murmuring calculations under their breath. They tracked Venus' appearances and disappearances with fanatical precision, 580 for days per full cycle. When Venus reappeared as the morning star after its invisible phase, wars were declared, kings were crowned, and sacrifices were made. The planet's glow meant divine endorsement or celestial danger. The mainstream historical fact is clear. Venus was central to Mayan cosmology. The Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving Mayan books, contains a detailed Venus table that predicts its cycles across centuries. Historians still argue whether the priests understood orbital mechanics or if their accuracy was the result of long-term empirical observation. Either way, the Codex's data is so precise that modern astronomers can align its entries with real Venus phases. It's both eerie and awe-inspiring, like finding an ancient spreadsheet written in hieroglyphs. A faint wind brushes past, and you can almost hear a distant horn, a conch shell's low cry echoing through time. In your mind's eye, you see the ritual unfold. The city gathered at the plaza's heart, the high priest raising his obsidian mirror toward the eastern sky, scanning for the first pinprick of Venus. A gasp ripples through the crowd as it flares into sight. Drums thunder. Soldiers kneel. Somewhere, a torch is extinguished, marking the moment a new cycle begins. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some scholars believe Venus was linked to the god Kukulkan's dual nature, both creator and destroyer. When Venus appeared in the morning, it symbolized renewal. When it vanished, it warned of chaos. Farmers waited to sow crops until Venus' favorable rise, while generals launched raids to coincide with its glare. The Maya, it seems, were the original retrograde panic believers, but theirs carried far higher stakes than lost phone signals and bad coffee days. You tilt your gaze skyward. The bright dot of Venus winks at you like a cosmic pulse. Its rhythm governed everything from calendar corrections to the timing of coronations. The Maya believed that when Venus vanished into the sun's glare, it journeyed through the underworld, only to emerge reborn. That myth wasn't just religion, it mirrored astronomy. The planet's inferior conjunction, when it passes between Earth and the sun, matches the story perfectly. They had wrapped orbital mechanics in divine metaphor without needing to name a single planet by mass or orbit. Historians still debate whether the Venus-based war timings were political propaganda or genuine attempts to appease the gods. Maybe both. A ruler declaring war during Venus' morning rise could claim divine sanction, an excellent PR move when your citizens rely on celestial favor for survival. But there's evidence that the Maya also recorded Venus anomalies, unexpected delays, or brightness shifts as omens. It's tempting to imagine the priests squinting skyward, muttering, "That's odd. Maybe the gods are buffering." The night air grows colder, and the jungle's hum deepens into silence. You trace your fingers over a carved serpent winding across the wall, its tail wrapped around a five-pointed star. The stone still holds a faint warmth, as though the memory of 1,000 rituals lingers there. You realize Venus wasn't just an astronomical marker, it was a story about rhythm, about light disappearing and returning. It taught them patience, warning, renewal. Dot above you, Venus shimmers harder, almost white against the deepening indigo sky. You close your eyes, and for a heartbeat, you feel what those ancient astronomers must have felt, the pulse of a universe that speaks in cycles, not sentences. When you open them again, dawn is close, and the first birds begin to sing. You take one last look at the bright warrior star and whisper, half in reverence, half in awe, "It's still on schedule." The jungle exhales as you climb a ridge overlooking a vast plain where temples once gleamed. Like the teeth of gods, the air feels heavy with time itself, as though the centuries here move slower, thicker. You reach a weathered stone stela standing alone in the grass, its face carved with spirals, bars, and dots. You run your fingertips across the grooves, realizing you're touching the Mayan long count, their most ambitious attempt to pin down eternity. The long count wasn't just a calendar, it was a cosmic odometer. It didn't count seasons or birthdays, but epochs. To the Maya, time moved through immense cycles, each spanning roughly 5,125 years. When one ended, another began, not with fireworks, but with cosmic reset. The cycle that began in 3114 BCE ended, famously, in December 2012 CE. You remember the hysteria, the doomsday predictions, the documentaries, that one guy building a bunker in Kansas. But for the Maya, the 2012 date wasn't about apocalypse, it was about renewal. The universe didn't end. It exhaled and started counting again. The mainstream historical fact is that the long count recorded days from a mythic creation date. It used a vigesimal-based 20 system. Each position represented increasing multiples of 20 kin. Uinal, Tun, Kaat, and Bacton. When 5 Bactons rolled over, it marked a new world cycle. The scribes even described earlier worlds destroyed by flood, fire, or darkness, hinting that existence itself was a looping story of collapse and rebirth. Historians still argue whether these tales referred to actual geological memories or pure mythology. You step back, the sunlight slicing through low clouds, and the stella's carvings shimmer faintly. You can almost see the priest-mathematicians who once knelt before it, scratching glyphs into bark paper, converting days into eternity. Imagine trying to design a calendar that wouldn't just outlast your civilization, but remain meaningful long after your language faded. That's commitment. Meanwhile, you can't even keep your phone's date format consistent. A quirky tidbit surfaces from your thoughts. Some Mayan monuments record future events, thousands of years ahead. One inscription predicts the anniversary of a king's accession 40 octillion days into the future. That's a number so absurd it loops back into poetry. You picture some scribe smirking as he carves it, whispering, "That'll keep them guessing." But beneath the humor lies a profound truth. The Maya weren't obsessed with the end of time, but with its rhythm. The turning of a Bacton wasn't destruction. It was renewal, like a clock's chime announcing another hour in cosmic time. They saw themselves as caretakers of the current age, responsible for keeping the universe's gears turning smoothly until the next reset. You stand there, thinking about how many times they might have felt their world crumbling. Droughts, wars, foreign invasions, yet still believed the clock would restart. Historians debate whether the creation date of 3114 BCE corresponded to an astronomical event, a planetary alignment, maybe a rare solar conjunction. Some fringe theorists even link it to the appearance of a mysterious bright object in the sky, though no one agrees what it was. Perhaps a comet, perhaps imagination. But the very idea that the Maya anchored cosmic history to the heavens shows how inseparable sky and story were in their minds. You sit down beside the stela, letting the stone's warmth seep into your palms. The jungle around you is silent, almost reverent. You imagine time as they did, not as a straight line, but as a circle endlessly folding into itself. Every moment you live has happened before and will happen again. You laugh softly. That means you've technically already had this thought infinite times. Comforting, in a weird way. As the first stars appear, you glance once more at the glyphs glowing in the last orange light. The numbers spiral like fingerprints, ancient, precise, impossibly calm. You realize that maybe the long count wasn't about prediction at all. Maybe it was about teaching patience, about reminding us that even when everything feels like it's ending, it's only resetting. You whisper into the dusk, another cycle complete, and the wind through the grass answers with a sigh that sounds suspiciously like agreement. The path leads you into a hollow where time itself seems to pool. Moss crawls up the sides of forgotten altars, and the air smells faintly of rain and ash. You kneel beside a cracked jade mask, half buried in the soil, its surface gleaming with the ghost of a story. The Maya once believed that prophecy wasn't a thing told by seers, it was carved, painted, and burned into the world itself. Welcome to the realm of jade and fire, where predictions lived not in speech but in stone. You brush the dirt from a carved tablet, noticing lines that shimmer under your touch, glyphs describing floods, famine, and rebirth. Historians still argue whether these were actual forecasts or retroactive records of past disasters, written to look prophetic. Either way, the artistry makes you feel small. Each symbol looks alive, coiled with warning. The Maya didn't separate science and prophecy, they braided them like vines. When they tracked the skies, they weren't just measuring, they were listening. The mainstream fact: many Mayan cities produced Khatan prophecies, inscriptions marking 20-year intervals of fate. Each Khatan carried a tone: favorable, turbulent, or catastrophic. Priests read these cycles to prepare for shifts in political power or climate. When drought struck, they didn't blame chance. They looked back at the prophecies and said, "It was written." It's an elegant way to accept chaos, turn every disaster into part of a pattern. You almost envy that kind of psychological armor. The torchlight wavers on another panel. A serpent rises from water. A human figure kneels beneath falling flames. Next to it, glyphs describe the sky tree trembling. You think of it as a metaphor until you remember the sky tree was their Milky Way, which they depicted as a cosmic bridge. So when they said it trembled, perhaps they were describing comets or meteors, celestial disturbances woven into spiritual language. A quirky tidbit from modern scholars notes that some of these fire rain glyphs may align with known meteor showers, like the Leonids. The Maya might have been the first civilization to predict meteor storms. Centuries before telescopes, you imagine the rituals that followed such omens. Priests burning copal resin, smoke curling toward the stars, offerings of maize, feathers, and sometimes, yes, human hearts. But even in that intensity, there was calculation. Every act was timed to celestial cycles. The gods, they believed, preferred punctual devotion. You can almost hear an ancient astronomer muttering, "Don't start the ceremony. Early we'll miss the alignment." Historians still debate whether the more dramatic prophecies like the fall of dynasties or the coming of dark suns were meant literally or as moral warnings. Some point to inscriptions from Palenque hinting at future kings not yet born, events thousands of years ahead. Others think those were symbolic cycles, not forecasts. But then again, some modern historians refuse to rule out the possibility that the Maya recorded recurring climate patterns El Niño, for example, long before meteorology had a name. If so, their prophecies might have been early climate science dressed in sacred poetry. You pick up a shard of pottery and notice faint soot on the inside. It once held offerings, burned during astronomical rites. Fire, to the Maya, wasn't just heat. It was transformation. They believed flames could bridge the human world with the divine. So when they burned predictions, they weren't destroying them, they were sending them upward. Encoded in smoke, jade represented the earth, fire the sky, and between them stood humanity, forever translating one to the other. The jungle deepens into silence, and you realize you're sitting in what might have been an ancient observatory courtyard. The night sky above glitters sharp and endless. You can almost hear their whispers. The gods speak in cycles. The stars are their breath. You look up, and for a brief moment, the Pleiades cluster flashes between drifting clouds. You recall that the Maya watched those same stars to predict seasonal renewal. When the Pleiades reached zenith at midnight, it signaled the world's balance was safe for another year. Maybe that's all prophecy ever was, a conversation between fear and hope, written in language only the sky could confirm. You stay there a while longer, tracing your fingers through the dirt, imagining each speck as a spark of an old prediction still trying to come true. You climb higher into the jungle hills until the trees thin, revealing a cluster of ruined buildings tangled in vines. The air smells of damp bark and faded ink because once this was a library. You step into the remains of a stone room, and in the shadows, you imagine rows of bark paper books stacked like bricks of time. The Maya called them codices, and they were filled with numbers, glyphs, and cosmic tables. Most were destroyed by fire during the Spanish conquest, but a few, just 4, survived. And in those fragile pages, the stars still whisper. You picture the scene centuries ago, scribes crouched on woven mats, painting columns of red and black symbols using brushes made from animal hair. Every stroke of pigment was a prayer. These were not books to be read for pleasure, they were tools. Manuals for keeping the cosmos aligned. The codices recorded eclipses, planetary movements, rituals, and offerings. Each page combined astronomy, mathematics, and religion into one dizzying language. Historians still argue whether these codices were state documents, priestly calendars, or secret reference guides for a chosen few. The mainstream fact of the 4 surviving codices, the Dresden, Madrid, Paris, and Grolier, are complete. Yet what remains shows astonishing precision. The Dresden Codex, for example, contains eclipse tables accurate to the day, as well as rainfall predictions likely tied to lunar cycles. One section even predicts Venus appearances for over 500 years. Modern astronomers have verified that its math checks out. That means some ancient scribe, sitting cross-legged by candlelight, got planetary data right without even knowing what a planet was. You find that thought comforting and mildly insulting. A quirky tidbit about the Madrid Codex. It contains imagery of gods scattering seeds and pouring water, ritual acts tied to weather prediction. Some researchers think these pages were used by wandering priests performing agricultural ceremonies in rural villages. In other words, this might have been the world's first traveling almanac. Imagine a cosmic weatherman with a headdress and a jaguar pelt instead of a green screen. You step further inside. The walls are blackened by centuries of humidity, and a faint smell of smoke lingers, the ghost of the fires that consumed most of the codices. When Spanish friars found them, they saw heresy. These are works of the devil, one bishop wrote before ordering them burned. You stare at the ashes on the floor, realizing how much knowledge vanished in a single night. Hundreds of books gone, whole cycles of stars gone, every eclipse table, every mythic calendar erased with a flicker of flame. Yet somehow, a few survived. The Dresden Codex now rests in Germany, the Paris Codex in France, the Madrid Codex in Spain, and the controversial Grolier Codex, authenticity debated until recently, remains in Mexico. Historians still argue whether the Grolier is genuine, but its astronomical tables match known Mayan methods. Even its pigments test as ancient. It's a humbling reminder that knowledge, like light, can travel strange paths to survive. You imagine a moment centuries ago, a scribe hurriedly hiding his book inside a clay pot, sealing it beneath the temple floor as soldiers approached. The jungle would reclaim it, but not forever. Maybe he hoped someone like you would find it. Maybe he just couldn't bear to see the stars burn. You crouch and trace invisible pages in the air, whispering glyphs you don't understand. Each one feels like a heartbeat preserved in ink. These weren't just records, they were acts of faith that the future would still be watching. Outside, the rain starts to fall softly, tapping against the broken stones like fingers on parchment. You lift your face to it and think about how fragile wisdom is, how easily it burns. Yet somehow, even in fragments, the codices endure, still counting, still predicting, still whispering the pulse of the planets to anyone willing to listen. For a moment, you swear you can almost hear the rustle of pages that no longer exist, turning themselves somewhere in the dark, as if the sky itself refuses to let the story end. The rain eases as dawn bleeds into gold, and you make your way toward another city, this one older, grander, and eerily symmetrical. From the treetops, the ruins of Uxmal stretch across the horizon like the ribs of a fossilized giant. As you descend into the city's heart, the pattern emerges. Every pyramid, plaza, and arch faces the heavens with surgical precision. The Maya didn't just watch the stars, they built cities that listened to them. You stop before the Pyramid of the Magician, its oval base tilting slightly, like an ear angled toward the cosmos. Legend says it was built overnight by a dwarf born of an egg. But you know better. It was built by mathematicians and dreamers, stone by stone, to track celestial rhythms. Historians still argue whether this unique shape was symbolic or functional. But as sunlight hits its forehead, the alignment tells you everything. It's a conversation with the sky. The mainstream fact: Mayan cities such as Uxmal, Palenque, and Copan were astronomical instruments. Their main temples aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and even the risings of specific constellations. The city of Edzna, for example, has a building that tracks both solar and lunar cycles simultaneously. At Palenque, inscriptions describe the birth of gods timed to real planetary conjunctions. This wasn't coincidence, it was civilization as celestial choreography. You climb a staircase slick with morning dew. The horizon stretches before you, and you notice how the buildings line up along invisible sightlines. Each structure plays its part in a cosmic orchestra. When the sun rises on a solstice, its rays spill directly into temple doorways, igniting altars that have waited all year for that single moment. You imagine the gasps of onlookers, the priests murmuring in satisfaction the world is still in sync. A quirky tidbit: in some cities, the architects also accounted for sound. At Chichen Itza's Great Ball Court, a whisper at one end carries perfectly to the other, nearly 150 meters away. Some acoustical engineers today think this was intentional, a way for priests to communicate during rituals, or maybe just another playful experiment with harmony between human and cosmic frequencies. You picture a priest whispering, "Dinner's ready," and someone across the plaza actually hearing it. You wander toward a smaller building, its walls etched with star glyphs and rain gods. It's known as the Governor's Palace, and it's aligned almost perfectly with Venus' extreme northern rise. Imagine that, an entire government office positioned to mirror a planet's trajectory. Historians still debate whether this meant rulers claimed power through celestial sanction, or if they simply lived according to divine geometry. Either way, politics and astronomy made an oddly stable marriage here. The heat rises again, shimmering against the stones. You rest beneath a carved lintel depicting Chak, the rain god, whose curling nose watches the sky like a barometer. The Maya didn't build temples at random, they studied light, wind, and horizon angles for years before the first brick was placed. And yet, each site feels deeply human. These weren't sterile observatories, they were cities meant to be felt. You sense it even now, the hum of alignment, the balance of shadow and shine. Historians still argue whether every alignment served practical agricultural needs or spiritual ceremony. Perhaps both. Crops depended on rainfall, which followed predictable solar and lunar cues. So if the priests predicted the sky's behavior, they essentially forecasted the harvest. It's ancient meteorology wrapped in myth. To the Maya, planting wasn't just an act of labor, it was a renewal of the cosmic contract. As the day stretches on, you climb the final terrace. The jungle spreads below you like a green ocean, and you realize the whole city forms a calendar, walls marking equinoxes, doorways measuring solstices, courtyards tracking Venus, moon, and time. Even decay hasn't erased its rhythm. The shadows still fall as intended. The system still works. A breeze rolls through, carrying the scent of orchids and rain. For a moment, you close your eyes and listen. The rustling leaves sound almost like whispers from another era. Architects, priests, and stargazers murmuring across centuries. Everything is connected. Listen closely. The stars are speaking. You exhale and whisper back, "I hear you." By now, the stars feel almost familiar, like old friends who've been quietly winking at you all night. You lie back on a weathered stone near the top of an ancient observatory and open your phone's star tracking app just to see. There's Venus, right where the Maya said it would be. There's Jupiter, lumbering along its orbit exactly as predicted in glyphs carved over 1,000 years ago. You smile. Modern tech confirms what they once mapped with nothing but sharpened sticks and patience. It's humbling, isn't it? NASA, with all its satellites and billion-dollar telescopes, still tips its hat to these people. Mainstream fact: when scientists compared Mayan eclipse records and planetary tables from the Dresden Codex to modern calculations, they discovered the Maya had predicted solar eclipses with an error margin of less than half a day. Half a day. That's like predicting your pizza delivery time to the minute. Centuries before ovens were even a thing, you swipe through the SkyMap app, watching digital dots trace ancient orbits. Historians still argue whether the Maya's astronomical precision stemmed from naked eye observation or complex mathematical modeling. Some scholars think they had an unrecorded system of optical aids, perhaps mirrors, water basins, or crystal lenses to magnify the stars. No one can quite prove it, but you can almost imagine a priest squinting through a bowl of still water, muttering, "Yup, Jupiter's late again." The quirky tidbit: in 2021, researchers noticed that certain Mayan inscriptions correspond closely with modern measurements of the planet Mercury's orbit. An impossible coincidence, unless they were actually tracking it. It turns out their curiosity wasn't limited to what they could easily see. The Maya might have been the first to notice Mercury's irregular speed, long before European astronomers even named it. Maybe they didn't call it retrograde, but they definitely noticed when the sky started acting weird. You scroll further, and the glowing dots on your screen begin to overlap the horizon line of the ruins. For a dizzying moment, the ancient and the digital merge. The same stars that lit the jungle temples now fill your phone screen, and somehow they agree. The math works. The geometry holds. Across centuries, humans have argued, built, fallen, and rebuilt. But the sky has never missed an appointment. You remember hearing about the 2012 panic, that global moment when people decided the Mayan calendar predicted doomsday. But you know better now. The long count didn't end at reset. The Maya didn't fear time running out. They celebrated time renewing itself. To them, the cosmos was like breathing in and out, expansion and return, never destruction. You think of it like your phone's battery cycling. It's not dead, just recharging. Historians still debate how the Maya balanced myth and measurement. Were their astronomical predictions meant for prophecy or for precision? Did they track the heavens to please gods or to plan harvests? Maybe it was both. To them, science and spirituality were a single sky. The equations were prayers. The temples were telescopes. Night deepens. Fireflies blink between stone pillars like fragments of fallen constellations. You think about how some of today's astrophysicists study Mayan sky data for insights into precession and eclipse cycles. In 2024, one study even confirmed that certain Mayan tables predicted lunar eclipses with an accuracy rivaling Babylonian records. The Maya didn't just watch the heavens, they understood their rhythm. You stretch, bones creaking like old wood, and gaze upward again. The stars drift in slow arcs. You realize how human it all is, this endless urge to chart the infinite, to make meaning from motion. You wonder what the Maya would think of telescopes orbiting Earth now, peering farther than they ever dreamed. Probably something like, "Took you long enough." A soft laugh escapes you. The air smells of stone dust and wet leaves. Somewhere out there, a satellite beeps its data to Houston, tracing the same constellations priests once painted on bark paper by torchlight. The sky, it turns out, keeps every secret. It never lies. And though civilizations fade, their mathematics echo proof that humanity, in all its fragile curiosity, keeps reaching upward. You close your eyes, feeling that pull, the same one they felt toward something vast, patterned and eternal. The jungle hums again, the same low rhythm that has underscored every step of your journey. You sit beneath a ceiba tree, the sacred world tree of the Maya, its roots clawing into the earth like memory itself. Overhead, the Milky Way stretches across the sky, a shimmering band of light the Maya called Sakbi, the White Road. To them, it wasn't just a galaxy, it was a celestial highway connecting the realms of gods, humans, and ancestors. And tonight, you find yourself standing right in the middle of that glowing bridge. You trace invisible lines between stars, just as their astronomer priests once did. The constellations rearrange in your mind not as the Greeks saw them, but as the Maya did. A turtle, a jaguar, a ball player, a maze god reborn. Every dot of light feels alive, part of a breathing pattern too immense to grasp. The mainstream fact, Mayan star maps actually reflected mythic geography. The Orion Nebula wasn't just a hunter, it was the hearth of creation, where the gods of maze were born anew each cosmic cycle. You recall the long count once more, its vast arithmetic of bactons and catons ticking like an ancient metronome. When it reset in 2012, people panicked, but the Maya would have smiled knowingly. Time doesn't end, it turns. To them, beginnings are disguised endings, and destruction is just renovation on a cosmic scale. Historians still argue whether this cyclical view came from agricultural rhythms or philosophical design. But either way, it suggests something radical, that every fall is followed by renewal. The quirky tidbit: some linguists discovered that Mayan glyphs for time also mean movement and breath. Time wasn't a static number, it was something alive, exhaling through days, stars, and people. The calendar itself was a living creature, sleeping, waking, and starting over. You glance at your smartwatch, which beeps exactly at midnight, and for once it feels pitifully small compared to the pulse of the universe. You imagine those ancient stargazers sitting just where you are now, counting Venus risings, tracing Jupiter's path, whispering calculations to the beat of drums. Maybe they looked up and wondered, who will read our stars when we're gone? Well, apparently you did. Their mathematics, their myths, their cosmic choreography have leapt through centuries to find you. And maybe that was their real prediction, not the end of the world, but the entrance of curiosity. Historians still debate whether the Maya truly intended their calendars to prophesy specific world events, or whether later generations layered their fears atop misunderstood symbols. But under this vast sky, you suspect it never mattered. The point wasn't knowing the future, it was knowing the pattern that keeps planets circling, seasons changing, and hearts beating in time with the stars. You lie back and breathe with it, sensing your chest to that slow celestial rhythm. The air cools, crickets resume their gentle static. The sky above no longer feels distant, it feels like a mirror. You think of all the civilizations that have risen and fallen, each one mapping its own meaning into those same constellations. The Maya just happened to do it beautifully, and with math so good it still works. A meteor flares a brief, bright whisper, and as it fades, so does the waking world around you, sliding softly into that quiet space where thought becomes dream. The night stretches thinner now, softer at the edges, like silk slipping from your shoulders. You let the last images linger, the white road of stars, the hum of distant frogs, the stone cities breathing in time with the sky. The Maya believed sleep itself was a small journey into the underworld, a nightly rehearsal for rebirth. Maybe that's what this feels like, a descent not into darkness, but into calm. You imagine the cosmic calendar still turning, unseen gears clicking beyond the clouds. Every heartbeat, every inhale, another day marked on that eternal wheel. The Mayan never feared its turning. They trusted it. Everything, they thought, has its season: life, love, ruin, renewal. The sky taught them patience. It can teach you to dot your mind drifts, tracing one last orbit through everything you've seen. Temples that align with sunrise, codices that whisper of Venus, predictions carved in jade. You realize none of it was really about doom. It was about continuity, about never losing the rhythm. Even when worlds shift, the jungle fades, the stars melt into warm darkness. Your body feels lighter now, like part of that great cyclical breathing. Time folds inward, just as it always has, and for a moment, you're not counting seconds anymore, you're floating between them. So rest now. The world will turn again tomorrow, just as it always has. The Maya knew that. You know it now. Sweet dreams.